Hey, hi there. My name is Francisco. Today I want to share with you how to take advantage of realized automation cloud templates and introduce public cloud services such as Amazon RDS for MySQL. I hope you enjoy it. So here it is. This is an existing cloud template that deploys a shopping cart application. It is already crafted to fit in Amazon Cloud, but also on VMware Cloud on AWS. So we are essentially in public cloud, and the workload works and it's all great. But I want to replace my existing VM that hosts the MySQL. As you can see, all I'm doing is installing the MySQL application, but it won't scale, it won't be very resilient. But then I realized that I actually can take advantage of public cloud services like the Amazon RDS for MySQL, which essentially gives me the same release that I need for my shopping cart application to work. So I can actually replace this and let AWS to deal with the rest. But from VRA point of view, how can I do that? In order to do that, you got the advantage of using existing constructs that you can drag and drop in the canvas. So you delete that existing database based on a VM, and then you can have it replaced by using the RDS constructs inside VRA. As you can see here, I have one for the cluster with all the properties that you will expect to use when you create this kind of resource, even if you do it from the public cloud Amazon GUI. And in here, you can see something very similar for the instance resource, right? So I need at least these two definitions, right? And then all you need to do at this point is just pretty much to provide the input for the properties, add any other property that you would like to have, not just the default ones or the very minimum that you need to execute the service. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I already have them crafted. So I'm going to replace them. I'm going to do the same for the instance I just did for the cluster. But let's do it for the instance as well. And what I'm doing here is just adding some lines of code with some inputs, some properties that needs to be available. Things like the cluster prefix, the name of the database, credentials. And you can see here, actually, I'm going to collect the password from user input, right? And that's at the cluster level. And for the instance itself, I'm going to do something very similar, even add some tags so I can identify these resources easily later on. Now, you can see right here that I have even the instance tag that I want to define for my RDS instance. Again, this is the kind of information you will expect to have when you create these resources through AWS console. Now, you can tell that my front end is kind of like alarmed because, yes, it was pointing to a database before, and now is that different, right? And this database is actually coming from my Cloud Init segment, right? I initialized this application using Cloud Init, which is pointing obviously to the previous resource. So all I need to do is now to say, well, you want to know what is your MySQL configuration? That's fine. You can actually point it to the new resource. In this case, it's going to be the cluster because the cluster in RDS is the point of entry to all the instances. And all I need to do is to inspect all the available properties that I'm going to be getting back as part of this deployment. And the one that I'm looking for is actually endpoint. This will populate the configuration of the MySQL for my application, so it's going to be able to find whatever new RDS cluster I create. And not only that, I'm going to define a dependency because I want to make sure that the RDS gets built before my VM with the front end gets constructed. So let's go ahead, let's deploy it, let's give it a name. Let's continue. We are going to be prompted for some input, right? It doesn't matter that now we have replaced the database. The input that we want the user to provide is going to be there, like the password for the database. This is something that I'm going to pass all the way down to the RDS cluster, right? But the end user or customers, they don't really need to worry about that. And in here, I'm going to speed up a little bit the deployment so you can see all the steps being generated by VRA, right? All the activities that VRA is going to be working on to get this application in shape, right? You can see that policies are checked. You can see that resources are allocated, the resources are being created, and all information about those resources once they are created is is displayed and sent back to VRA. So like in this case, we just created the cluster, and now the instance is being created as we go. Normally, that's the one that it takes a little bit more time to complete, right? That's the actual database node. So that's been created. You can see here now it's telling me that, yeah, this is done. And now remember that dependency, I didn't want to launch the creation of my BMC front end before my database was created, right? So now that can happen, and you can see right here the Cloud Machine was completed after the RDS was done. Information about the deployment is here, right? So I got exposed to all those details right here from VRA. No need to go into multiple GUIs to get this thing done. Right here you can see a visual representation of the actual workload, and if I select one of the resources like the RDS cluster, you will see every single information that was passed as part of input, or either way user input, or fixed by the cloud template, or any other information that was derived as part of the creation of the resource, like the endpoint, right? This endpoint information is going to be needed by my front end. You can see that that information is going to be available to you, and you can recognize these properties if you have done any RDS implementation in the past. This is for my RDS instance. You can see the name of the database that I was actually created inside and whatnot. And in here, this is my front end. It's a standard VM that was initialized with Cloudini, right? And if you remember well, we decided to provide the output of the RDS cluster, right, the endpoint property, so it can configure the backend, right? My application is going to need access to the database, so it needs to know how to access the database, and there you have it. That's going to be now coming from the endpoint. So if we actually test our shopping cart application, you can tell that it's still working. Even now, our backend is an RDS. It's a more powerful RDS because now I can easily scale this workload by just saying, give me more nodes, more instances, and I don't really need to worry much about anything else. I don't really need to worry about the patching. I don't really need to worry about backups and whatnot, right? So there you have it. I hope you like it and you can use it in the future. Thank you.